I'm 9 years old. I've just arrived in Kansas City, Missouri, thousands of miles away from my hometown, Nagpur, India. My family's moving in waves. First it was my brother, now it's my dad and me, and later it'll be my sister and mother. In those early days, my brother, dad, and I live in my aunt's basement, whose house is in this really ritzy neighborhood with manicured lawns and swimming pools. Even some of the Kansas City Royals and Chiefs players live here in this neighborhood. Staying here means I go to one of the best public schools in the region. At school, the class difference, I can immediately sense the class difference. Whereas most of my classmates wear designer jeans, Levi's and all, I wear the knockoff brand from Kmart. And whereas my friends are dropped off in Infinitis and Mustangs, my father drops me off in a run-down, squealing Nissan Altima with its silver paint chipped off and oil and coffee stains all on the inside. The Nissan is a hand-me-down from my 17-year-old cousin, who literally is the human version of the Tasmanian devil. In India, my dad worked both as an engineer and an accountant at different times. But here in America, I see him struggling to find work in either one of those fields. For a good while, our family's income comes from the yellow pages that he distributes to people's doorsteps. On the weekends, he asked me to help him. To be honest, I never want to do it, but given how much my parents are working and sacrificing for us, my conscience just won't allow me to say no. On one of those weekends, my dad and I are headed to a new route. As always, my dad reminds me, Yusufi, just go to the door, ring the bell, and hand the person that comes the yellow pages. It sounds simple, but the closer we get, I realize we're in the same neighborhood as that of my classmates. I'm anxious. What if I run into someone I know? Thankfully, the morning goes off well. I don't run into anyone, thank God. But then I'm in front of this big white door with these two side windows. I ring the bell and I peer in. Approaching the door is Cara May, this blonde, ponytailed girl with cute dimples whom I had a crush on at school. I panic, drop my yellow pages, and make a run to the Nissan. Hide in between the dashboard and the passenger seat. I'm embarrassed. Embarrassed that we're poor. Embarrassed that I'm delivering books. Even more embarrassed that my father's delivering books. I just want to hide. A couple of years later, my dad gets a decent job and we move into a new neighborhood and a public school that fits more of our means. Yet, I still want to hide. When it comes to open houses at our middle school and high school, I never tell my parents. Because my mom's going to show up in her sari, the Indian garment that you'll see some of the Indian women wrapped in. And I never want to invite my friends over because I'm afraid what they're going to think of our Indian cooking. Does it smell or taste weird? Or my mom's going to ask them to take their shoes off before entering the house. Now, at times, I say to myself, Yusufi, who cares? The Indian cooking taste is more delicious and healthier than the fast food most of my classmates eat. And of course, leaving your shoes outside of the house is cleaner. But I just can't seem to find the courage to get over the anxiety or whatever that feeling is of being perceived as different. Now I'm off to college at Princeton, and I'm excited because there's going to be a lot more folks like me there than I'm back home. But the first morning I wake up on campus, the two planes crash into the towers. Before, it was my immigrant identity that was in question. Now it's my faith identity. I even question if I want to be Muslim. Is Islam a violent religion? I start reading books and books on Islam, and even enroll in an Arabic course to be able to read the Quran in its original language. I want to know what my religion's really about. Thankfully, the more I learn about my faith, though, the more I fall in love with it. Now, I still want to hide parts of my Muslim self. Later, I'm in graduate school in London, and my classmates and I go to the local pubs. Now, instead of telling them I can't drink because I'm Muslim, I tell them, guys, if I start drinking, I just can't stop. I have to stay sober. Of course, my classmates are all supportive and everything, but it's not the truth. I also hide my identity, especially when I'm traveling. I read cases of Muslims being taken off of airplanes because a passenger reports them to the authorities. And so on flights between London and the United States, I try to blend in with the business travelers, clean shaven and trousers pressed. Or I'll go with the grungy look, plaid shirt, pants a little bit too short, because hipsters don't hurt anybody. Now, on one of those flights, I'm headed to Boston, where I'm starting work as a community organizer. In Boston, I start going to my local mosque, Roxbury, the Islamic Society of Boston Cultural Center, and I meet there the executive director, Bilal. As an organizer, my work overlaps with his, and so what initially is a work relationship blossoms into a beautiful friendship. Bilal's kind of like me. He moved to this country when he was 9, is of Indian origin, but unlike me, he grew up in Nigeria until his family moved here. And also, unlike me, he can't dribble a soccer ball for the life of him, which is so unusual because he's from freaking Nigeria. Yeah. Now, Bilal is a pretty darn practicing Muslim, and I like that because it's rubbing off on me. From time to time, my work pays for me to explore organizing around the world. And I decide, you know what, I want to go study how the Turkish community is organizing in Germany. I asked Bilal if he wants to come, and he's excited to go. A few months later, I'm on the train headed to Logan. Start wondering, what is Bilal going to wear? I go with the business look. Bilal shows up with khakis and a sweater. That's good. But I can't seem to take my eyes off of his Muslim man beard, full and all. Our flight's at 9 o'clock, and that means, and because it's international, we've shown up 3 hours earlier. And because the sun hasn't set yet, this means that our sunset prayer will be right in the middle, one of the Muslims' 5 prayers. Now, as a Muslim, no matter where you are, you're supposed to do your prayer in its physical form, right? With the up and down movements and a series of prostrations. But usually when I travel, I just do it mentally or don't do it at all, thinking God will forgive me because I can't find a place to pray. So the sun is starting to set, and Bilal turns to me. Hey man, it's time for prayer. Before I can get a word in, he starts heading to the gate attendant. I'm saying to myself, where the heck are we going to pray? Okay, maybe Bilal saw one of those airport meditation rooms, and that's where we're going to go. I overhear Bilal saying to the gate attendant, hey ma'am, can we pray in that corner? I'm like, in that corner? In front of all these passengers? Right in next to the gate? The attendant says, sure, no problem. My heart is racing, but out of a sense of loyalty or friendship, I find my body rising and following Bilal. He takes out the prayer mat and we start praying. This is absolutely one of my worst prayers. I'm not focusing on God. I'm focusing on what's going to happen right afterwards. Is one of the passengers going to report us so we can't fly? Or worse, are the feds going to surround us and take us into the interrogation room? You know what happens? Nothing. We board safely and land safely in London, pray there. Land in Berlin, pray there. We even take a side trip to Poland and pray in a train station there. As I arrive back in Boston, through my journey, I start to become unsettled. Had I allowed what others thought of me to restrict my practice of my faith? Or had I let the fear of cases, yes, legitimate, but had I let those cases scare me into not being me? What is settling, though, is that with every successful prayer, I get this strange sense of wholeness, liberation. I feel more fully me. So now, as we arrive back into Boston, I start committing myself to being, I love this feeling, and I start committing to myself to be more authentically me, both in private and in public, for myself and for others, like Bilal had been for me. About 2 summers ago, I'm taking my 14-year-old nephew on a road trip to Colorado. We're going to check out the Rockies. We start out in Kansas City, drive through Kansas, then drive through Colorado, and then head through New Mexico and back to Texas, where my nephew lives. When we're on the road and it's time to pray, I pull over to the rest area, get out of the car, take my prayer mat out, and pray on the green grass. The first few times I do this, I can see my younger self in my nephew's eyes. He stays in the car, he's hiding, he doesn't pray. But sometime around New Mexico, as I pull over into the rest area, I see him starting to get out, joining me, and giving it a try. Thank you very much.